I love to remind people of this, as we activate these centers, especially if it's a lot of energy that it hasn't previously harmonized to in the physical experience, the nerves around that center, and all these centers correlate to a nerve plexus of some sort, they can get hyperactivated. And this is simply your body being activated and the nerves around the energy center being activated. Welcome to SoulPod, where science meets mysticism and your inner wisdom leads the way. I'm your guide, Crystal Cassidy, and together we will bridge the seen and the unseen, science and spirituality, the practical and the profound. From quantum physics to energy centers, near-death experiences to extraterrestrial contact, join us as we delve into the mysteries of consciousness and journey together towards a more awakened, compassionate, and soul-connected world. Find your seat, drop in, and let's go on a journey together. Welcome back, light beings. We have a really exciting episode for you today. I get these questions all the time around energy centers. We do a lot of work with this in SoulPod, and so we are going to dive deep into the first 3 energy centers today. We'll get into the rest of them in another episode, and then we'll close with a really powerful meditation for aligning your first 3 centers. So let's dive in. Welcome, Kat and Linda.
Hey.
This is very foundational to what SoulPod is all about. So we're going to go into what are energy centers, chakras, however you want to refer to them, nadis, lines of energy. How can you activate yours? What themes of consciousness are usually present at each of these centers? So what do you all think energy centers are? How do you relate to, just at a very high level, the concept of an energy center?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like before SoulPod, when I think of energy centers, I think of the very limited knowledge that I had on chakras and on, different points in the body. But I guess, especially since our Kundalini episode, I've been thinking a lot about the flow of energy more so than just it as a singular point, which is what I used to see it as. But mainly my experience in it is limited to going to Reiki healers and them saying like, oh, this particular center is blocked. But it's been cool to learn about how it's more about it's the flow and the communication between, and not just each individual center becoming unblocked and turning on their own. But what about you, Kat? What's your background in it?
Yeah, that resonates as well. Part of my journey, I feel like that shift in my orientation around them to more of that flow that's moving through all of them, and even shifting from, which I'm sure we'll touch on, kind of like at one point in my journey feeling like, oh, an energy center or a chakra can be blocked, and having almost like fear around it versus like, we'll get into this more, but just a harmony that exists between all of them, and that creates this channel between each center and ultimately, our channel of energy, what connects us to the field. And it's been interesting in my journey to hone my awareness around each center and see the correlation between my physical body and also my, I guess that would be, energetic body, but the way I exist, whether that be like expression or my sense of safety, all things we'll get into, but just seeing how the nuances of each energy center really plays into our day-to-day lives and how we can access each in a like pinpointed way in our healing and in our practices. And it's been just really beautiful to develop that relationship with each center for me. What about you, Crystal? Bring it home.
Yeah. No, I think you hit on some really good points there, Kat. So at a really high level, I think of the energy centers as being this kind of interstitial system that connects the physical and the non-physical. And you were kind of mentioning that. It's the aperture through which we can access the field. And it's a very foundational element of all of us. Like, we all have them, whether you're aware of them or not. And it can feel like a very esoteric conversation to begin with, because you're like, energy centers, chakras. I mean, I've heard of them, but are they real? So we can really think of these energy centers as being this connective tissue between the physical and the non-physical. And again, it can sound very esoteric, very mystical. You maybe heard references like you mentioned, Linda, in different energetic practices and healing modalities. But it's really fascinating that this concept in many different forms has become a common thread through many different spiritual traditions, whether you're talking about the nadis, which are these lines of energies throughout our body, acupuncture, these are also lines of energy throughout our body. And so the energy centers are these areas of our body that is where many lines of your energetics cross. It's kind of like a super highway, like one of those, all the on and off ramps in these overpass systems. That's kind of how I think of the energy centers. It's an amalgam in one particular area of your body, but it's also not limited to your body. It's within and around, like Kat was mentioning. It's connecting you to the field. It's the in-between state of your human experience and your spiritual experience. And it's almost like the skeletal structure of your energy body, in a way. And there's a reason why we hear about this concept in so many different spiritual traditions. And the more that you awaken, and I encourage you to not take our word for it today, go through some meditations, discover your own personal relationship to these energy centers, which we'll help you with at the end of today's episode. You'll maybe start to discover that there's a level of consciousness that correlates to each energy center itself, or chakra. Chakra meaning wheel, meaning like a spinning, moving, constantly evolving consciousness or energy. So it isn't the case, I like to mention this, that you have to turn on all of your energy centers. They're already on. They're already a part of you. They're already moving in whatever way they're moving. We all have our own unique energetic constitution. So your relationship to your energy centers is going to be a unique journey, which is what SoulPod is all about. And like I think Kat mentioned, it's also, even though we're talking about this in a semi-linear fashion, like the first energy center and then the second energy center, it's also all happening at one time. Energy's coming into your central channel, it's moving out of it, you're receiving, you're expanding, you're constricting. So it's a very living, dynamic element of you, just like your body is a living, dynamic, ever-changing element of you. You have a completely new body with mostly all new cells every so many years. So it's 7. Yeah, I was not sure if it. I was like, that's the number that was coming to me, but every 7 years, so you're never really the same. And this is even more so the case for your energetic system, your spiritual system.
As you say that, I'm wondering if we're born with certain constitutions where our ratios are like more heavy in certain energy centers. Like, for example, if which I've felt throughout my journey, like my solar plexus is always popping off when I'm doing Reiki on myself meditating. It's like my hands extending past where my arm length is. And then other energy centers, like my root center, it's a lot more difficult for me to feel the energy build there, to really tune into that space. It takes a lot more focus and intention. So I'm wondering if people are born, and as you're saying, like the ratios are fluid as, our environment and our circumstances and our like journey progresses. But I'm wondering if you feel like there are constitutions that people are born with in that way.
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think yes. I think even during certain times in your life, your energy system may be weighted in different ways. So absolutely, it's always shifting. As far as I think what you're getting at is when you came into this incarnation, did you have kind of a certain baseline, if you will?
Like certain energy centers that are more sensitive to becoming imbalanced or balanced.
I know what you're talking
interesting.
about. Yeah, I have that too. Like a propensity for, like, my third eye is it's easy for me to activate here, but I really struggle with like the more grounding sensations, I don't tune into those as quickly as I do here. And it's almost to a fault too. Like sometimes I can tell that I'm a little bit too floaty and not activated enough in the more grounded energy centers, you know, especially early in the awakening process. Like I really got way too lost in the sauce of the ethereal, you know what I mean? But yeah, what were you going to say, Crystal?
Yeah, well, you're hitting right on where I was kind of going with it, which is that oftentimes, and probably many people that are listening to this that are coming into this incarnation with a certain level, even if you're not consciously aware of it, but a certain level of spiritual, I don't know if advancement's the right word, but your energy can naturally kind of want to hang out up here, like star seeds, like souls that have done a lot of spiritual work in prior incarnations, whether on this planet or otherwise. My intuition is that it makes a lot of sense what you both are mentioning. And this the exact same for me. It's really easy for me to access like heart space and above. And even when I was severely ill, I had a really hard time. It went even higher up. It was like up here in my crown. I had to really work at bringing the energy down into the lower energy centers. And there can be many reasons for this. One, like you mentioned, you're kind of coming into the plane, into the earth plane with this already comfortable in these upper energy centers. Like your soul's like, that's where I want to hang out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also okay. I actually had this question of one of my teachers, and I was like, it's just hanging out in my heart space.
Yeah.
And, you know, as he said, I think I mentioned before, it's not a bad place to hang out. So it makes a lot of sense. And that's why a lot of times this earthly work is so difficult, is because it's more dense and it's more human based and physical. And so if you can make sense, right? You're coming into a new incarnation, especially as a child, and you're like, what is this? I don't want to go down there. And sometimes that like hangs around for a while. But to have a really powerful thing about these lower centers, which is maybe where we'll focus today, is that if you can balance them, if you can activate them in a way that is harmonious with the rest of your energetic constitution, there's all kinds of gifts and unlocks that are, yes, very human, very emotion, thought, belief based and body based. And there's some really powerful spiritual unlocks at those centers too, which I like to remind those who like to hang out here. I'm like, there's also really cool gifts of the lower centers that you can activate. And it's interesting you both mentioned this because that was my experience too.
Big one for me. And I feel like there might be like a karmic link here too, where like when I first had my awakening, you know, a big part of my journey has been learning to show up online comfortably. That's been like the karma that I came to this earth to master, you know? And
which you're doing so amazingly.
Which I'm constantly like running into obstacles around my throat chakra being blocked. And I remember when I had what's it called? I had an Akashic record reading, and the person told me like, oh, the most recent life you had, like you were in Paris, you had written all of these things, but you never published it. You never got past that fear of like actually speaking up. And then like 6 months later, you know, that first big breakthrough happened. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start like speaking my mind and showing up online, all these things. Still didn't do it. And then 6 months later, I went to a Reiki healer and she's like, your throat chakra is so blocked. She's like, you have to get like the confidence in your own voice out, you know? And I didn't even tell her about the Akashic record reading, but it was the same kind of theme where it was like, you're here to clear this block that is really challenging for you to clear right now. So I wonder if that also, I mean, I guess as we go through each energy center, we can talk about like the symptoms and things like that come up when it's like not activated or blocked, for lack of a better word. But I wonder if you all have had the same kind of like repeating struggle with the same center, you know, where it shows up in different ways.
Yeah, I definitely have. I think there have been a few. And again, kind of like we touched on, it's like at different points in my journey, different energy centers have been where I've needed to place my focus. Like at the beginning of my spiritual awakening, a lot of it was in my root center, which maybe we can, you know, kind of start getting into. But I would be biking around. I was living in Toronto at the time, and I had tuned into this really needing to feel safe and feel grounded, and had tuned into this is a huge place where my attention needs to be. So I'd be biking around Toronto just saying to myself, like, I am safe for
Aw.
hours. And it
Aw.
was yeah, and it was just once I realized like there's such a imbalance here. Like I've been living up here for so long, and
Mhm.
there's such a lack of attention and intention and love being placed in these energy centers, like my bottom two mostly. I had to spend years there. Like I feel like I just kind of graduated into like feeling a consistent sense of groundedness, and like my root centers I've established a new threshold of safety there to where I can more easily just jump around and activate other energy centers without needing to always return to my root.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it's different energy and it will constantly surprise you. You're like, oh, I thought that I really had the sacral like handled, and then
Yeah.
that center comes back and it's like, oh, there's another layer to the onion
Totally.
there.
Always another layer.
So it's just like the spiritual journey we talk about so much, it's an ongoing journey. And the more that you bring light, like literal spiritual light to each of these centers, the more your entire system comes into harmony. So sometimes if you're healing something in the sacral and this is coming into increased harmony, increased amounts of energy can move into that center. A lot of times what you'll hear is there'll be another energy center that gets unlocked in some way. A lot of times for the sacral, it's also the throat that tend to be
No
kind
way.
of
Oh my gosh.
connected.
Interesting.
Yeah. The birthing, this, we'll get into the second center, but that expression of your creation, it makes sense that the two they're all
That's
connected.
true. Yeah. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's so interesting. Yeah, that's amazing. Should we go through each of the centers so people know
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
what we're
let's
talking
go.
about?
and maybe a little bit of like, okay, what's the North Star here? I get all my energy centers activated. What does that mean for me?
Mm.
So you can listen back to our Kundalini episode as far as the awakening process and what the central channel, which is what we were talking about, when that's activated,
Mhm.
what that can do for you. It simply means that you have increased amounts of information coming into your system, and you can start to choose how you want to run your energy, your toric field, your torus field. You can start to think about, okay, where do I want to put this spiritual energy? Do I want to connect with benevolent beings in higher dimensions? Do I want to channel this into a novel? Do I want to heal my physical body? Like, it opens up infinite possibilities, because when you're in contact with the field, you have access to infinite possibilities, and this is the highway to that contact.
Oh my gosh.
So I just want to kind of like set the stage for why this even is relevant on your spiritual journey. It's like the most relevant.
Yeah. No, I love
is the
that. I
spiritual
love
journey.
that like real life application where it's like, okay, so if you have this destination that you feel called to, like like some kind of karmic intention, like showing up, online, something that's very real life, and you know that this is the thing that you want to do, examining your energy centers is a great way to see why you're experiencing resistance to taking the action steps needed to get there, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool.
Or
It's
I think what a lot of people experience, if you experience the same symptom, like physical symptom,
Mm,
for a long time, headaches or sore throats or like debilitating PMS. And this isn't to say like don't, also seek a doctor.
right, of course.
We're not
Yeah.
doctors. I'm not saying
yeah,
that.
not medical device.
Yeah,
Or
this is not
advice. There
medical
we go.
advice. Yeah, subtext. And this is another place to put your attention. Like there it could also be pointing to an imbalance in one of these centers.
Yeah.
That's where I go first usually if I have a symptom.
Yeah.
If I have, a sore throat, I'm like, what do I need to express?
Yes, exactly. I love that.
100%. Yeah, the physical body as a blueprint is very helpful.
Yeah.
Totally.
For sure. So yeah, we'll start with the first center. So your first center, your root chakra, this is right around where your perineum is. If you don't know where that is, Google it. But this is the I like to think of it, at least in my experience, as the gate center. It's the center where you can open and kind of close the gate of energy moving into your central channel. And there's other ways that energy moves into your central channel, but through your first center is one of the big ones. Even setting the intention that I'd like to open my first center to receive more energy. It sounds very simple, but that's how these energy centers work. It's very simple and it's intentional, and it's all about your focus and your sensing of these centers. So how can you engage these energy centers? First of all, through your mind's eye, through your imagination, connecting to that space right at your perineum, right at your seat, and simply becoming more aware of that space. So this is the sensing part of connecting to your energy center. Everyone should have and does have access to this sensing way to connect to energy centers. So you can start to sense the space right at your perineum, outside of your body, within your body, right where your seat is. And then, like I was kind of talking about, the other way to access is through your mind's eye, through your imagination, and connecting to that space and starting to notice what you notice when you connect to that space. Is it a color? Is it moving forwards? Is it moving backwards? Is it moving in all directions? And you can just start to open a little bit to that connection. And the first center, as we were talking about, is all about grounding. So you hear about this. This is the connection to your earthly experience. It's the connection to this planet. It's your relationship with Gaia, Mother Earth, all of the elements of this planetary relationship and experience that you have. It's a connection to your physical body and finding safety, like Kat was referring to, in your physical experience. So this is finding safety, and this has been such a big one for me, having hypochondria and all kinds of like body related distrust challenges. That's really first center based. And it's going to ask you and it's going to challenge you to trust your body, that it is so much more intelligent than your mind gives it credit for. And so this first center is also where presence comes into play in a big way. Just like at the beginning of your spiritual journey, can I become present with where I'm at in my life, on the planet, in this time and space? How present can I get? And in that presence, can I access and notice that there is deep, deep safety? It's beyond, like, when I speak of safety, it's beyond the external circumstances. It's more of a knowingness of safety.
It's kind of like that, what we've said in other episodes of like my soul, my essence, it can't be harmed. It's like that zoomed out level of trust and safety. And even some practices that are coming to mind as Crystal's explaining it are like really tuning in, like at any moment you're on the street, like tuning into the earth beneath your feet, closing down the eyes, breathing down into the bottom of your feet, or if you're seated, into your seat, and connecting with that feeling of the earth underneath you and like holding you and supporting you. And yeah, it's just such a powerful, simple energy center to tune into. And we're in the process of moving today. And I've noticed over this weekend, like multiple times a day, I'm tuning into like the weight coming down through my feet into the earth, because they're so chaotic. I'm technically in between homes, like that sense of grounding and safety and nesting is all up in the air. So naturally, my root center is just a little, whether it be imbalanced, wonky, it's just like needs some love and attention. And so these kind of practices that are so simple, and it's really just a moment of focus into feet on the earth. It's powerful for me, at least.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You're right in the first center.
Yeah. Last 3 days, I'm just like, breathe. Yeah.
Ground.
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm
Ground.
safe. Another thing that's coming up for me is, and I mean this in a very like spiritualized, energetic way, your relationship with the planet. So if you are going about your life, and it's understandable, this is the case for many, and you don't feel like you are, I think there's indigenous traditions that don't have a word for nature because it's not separate from who they are. And I think that points to a first center lesson, that we're not separate from nature. We are nature. We are a part of this consciousness, and this planet has its own consciousness, its own awareness. And that relationship is really important. And you can see, if you zoom out and you look at the collective relationship with the planet, humanity's first center work is needed.
Something special happens when we step away from the noise of everyday life and into a space of amplified presence and deep devotion to our spiritual growth. A space where we're seen, supported, and reminded of the light within us. That is exactly what you'll have the chance to do on our SoulPod retreat. We are so excited to invite you on this 4-day immersion in Joshua Tree, California, August 28th through 31st, specifically designed to illuminate your path and harness the light within. From guided meditations under the stars to transformative breathwork journeys, this is more than a retreat. It's a portal into the next level of you. You'll be held in a sacred container with like-minded souls, moving from the earthly into the mystical, expanding your intuition, deepening into your purpose, and activating your true energetic potential. If you're ready to dive into the mystical with us, join Crystal, myself, and the amazing SoulPod team in the desert, under the stars, in the stillness, and beyond the veil. Head to www.soulpodapp.com/retreat to learn more and book your alignment call. Spaces are limited to just 12 light beings for this journey. So if you feel the call, listen.
Yeah.
So,
I feel like also money anxieties would probably come up in this space, right? Where it's about security and grounding, which is funny that, a lot of society is built on capitalism, and it's almost like, there's like a very
right.
obvious security block related to your groundedness and your connection to this planet when your sense of safety is dependent on something that is anxiety inducing. So I
Right.
feel like,
And
yeah,
there,
for those of us who struggle with like money anxieties, I wonder if focusing on this center would be really helpful.
yeah, definitely money anxieties. Again, you make a good connection there. It's a sense of safety. And is that sense of safety dependent truly on external things? And
Right.
certainly on some level it is, right?
Right.
Your physical safety, food, water, shelter. But kind of before we get into that, I want to mention a little bit more about this relationship with the planet. And in one of my meditations, kind of early on in my awakening, this was so powerful. And this was very first center activating. I allowed myself to connect with the planet. And there's all kinds of practices like dropping your grounding cord through all the layers of the planet, all the way to the center, and feeling that connection like from your first center. And I felt this like planetary energy. Like I actually was like, oh, that's what people talk about when they talk about Gaia. I was like surrounded in energetic leaves. Like I got enveloped with the planetary energy. And it was one of the most profoundly soothing, powerful. I felt incredibly safe and held. Like there's everything I could ever possibly need here. And she's providing for that. And very intelligent. So I like to mention that just because it goes so much deeper than like grounding with your feet on the planet. Yes, that's so important. But there's this whole other, like, for us who love to hang out in the upper centers, this is a very like spiritual experience, this connection to the planet. And she has so much wisdom. And I'm continuing to feel into that. But so we talk a lot about abundance work. We talk about manifesting from the first center, and this money relationship. And money just being an energy of, I have what I need. Do I have what I need? And money is an energy of providing that. One of the energies, not the only one. And so if we have a feeling of not being safe, because we don't have money, which is a very real experience for so many people, this first center can get really tightly wound up and tense and distrustful, and more of a focus placed on external circumstances than my internal sense of being, if you will. And this is a challenge. I don't want to downplay this challenge because it's a big one, and it's usually one of the first ones that you face in your spiritual work. And I think it's also one of the reasons why we have so many references of monastics and renunciants in the spiritual journey, because they're purposely working that first center by giving everything up. everything material that they can.
That makes sense. Like when you strip away the resources, because at the center of it all, I mean, it's funny because I feel like I just worked through my biggest money blocks like a few months ago. So I have very fresh knowledge of this. And that was probably 4 years into like my like entire spiritual process, you know? But it makes sense because once you strip away all of the fears and the anxieties and the insecurity around it, the lack of security around it, you realize that it's not the money that's providing the security. It's your own trust in you know, everything
Exactly.
else. Yeah, it's your oneness that is actually at the root of it all. So it makes sense that as an exercise, people would lean towards stripping away resources to prove to themselves how cared for they are by things that are beyond them, right? And beyond their material realm. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I got chills on that. You hit the nail on the head,
Yeah.
Linda. That's really what the first center is asking of us, which is no small
It's
feat.
it's
Yeah.
easily the hardest one to like in my experience, it was the hardest to work through for sure. Because
Yeah.
when, you know, when you didn't grow up seeing resources or you've never like experienced a safety before, it's hard to believe that it can exist beyond what you can individually output, you know what I mean? And I think victimhood is so easy to fall into in this place. And it is
Yeah.
so relevant because obviously there are social factors at play, economic factors at play. But it is really, it's so profound when you get to that breakthrough point of realizing like underneath it all, I'm okay. You know what I mean? And I am safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
You
it's irritating too, because that's where abundance
I
comes
know.
from,
It's
you know,
really,
that's
I
the worst
mean,
part.
it's
Yeah.
really grating, I think. You know, you're like,
It's
give me
not
a,
easy.
ugh.
Right.
But you mentioned something here, and this is a shadow of the first center, which is victimization, not just of money not coming to you from some level of perception, also of your body. Like I'm a victim of my body. That's another, which I certainly had to do a lot of work through, and finding that empowerment of, no, I'm a co-creator with my body.
Yeah.
I'm in this with it. And it's so, like I said before, and it took me a while to actually embody this knowing it's so much more intelligent than we think it is. Even in the physical realm, it's so intelligent. And that trust, and you can tell that like trust and faith is a big antidote to these shadows.
There's science that proves that the fastest way to snap someone out of fear is to give them faith.
Oxytocin,
Oxytocin
yeah.
is released in trust, which is an immediate antidote to fear and anxiety. So there
Yeah.
is like science to back up the fact that trust and faith and, you know, trust, surrender really at the core of it is your brain's immediate anti-anxiety dose, right?
And you'll find if we come back and bring it to the body, like we mentioned, if you're having first center challenges, a lot of times you can obviously start to feel maybe in your pelvis, like lower pelvis, your glutes, thighs, knees are a big one. The knee area is a big one. So whenever my knees are acting up on me, I'm asking myself, where am I harboring fear and distrust of my physical experience in this lifetime? Where am I putting too much pressure on myself in this human incarnation? So your feet are the path that you're walking on in this planet. So if your feet are really acting up, that's usually tied to how am I journeying in a way that's not aligned? So second center, really fun. Also one that I've had to do a lot of work on. So this is at the very base of your spine. So right where your spine kind of ends, your sacrum, your kind of lower pelvis, this is your second center. And so we talked a little bit about this in the Kundalini episode. When your energy first starts to move into this center, a lot of times you can have a sexual sensation. And this is because I love to remind people of this. As we activate these centers, especially if it's a lot of energy that it hasn't previously harmonized to in the physical experience, the nerves around that center, and all these centers correlate to a nerve plexus of some sort, they can get hyperactivated. So it's turning on your physical body, literally in some cases. And this is simply your body being activated and the nerves around the energy center being activated. So I don't necessarily call this sexual energy. I just call this energy entering your second center. And this center, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. So the sacral is a place of creativity, of birthing, not just human life. birthing human life is a huge element of this center. It's also birthing anything. It's the moment of conception. It's this moment where an idea, a belief, something comes into your state. It's like that initial sperm meets egg moment in the second center. And so your relationship to creativity is really important here. Your relationship to inspiration is really important here. Your relationship to sex is really important here. Your relationship to one and other. So if you think of the first center as being one, the second center as being myself and other. What's my relationship between how I think of myself, how I feel about myself, and how I relate to others? So the whole concept of duality, relationship, that's why emotions, this is a watery center. This is an emotional center. This is a creative center. And so I do a lot of work with emotions at the second center in the context of I'm a sovereign being. And this
Soul
is
sovereign.
soul sovereign. There you
Everyone
go.
on that journey.
Shout out.
Shout out.
You're doing the work.
Doing amazing.
But this is on some level of consciousness. When we get up to the upper centers, we're all connected, right? But the second center wants us to remember that in this human experience, the heart and below is very human. It's very planetary. We are sovereign in our experience. And to really claim your sovereignty, it also requires you to claim responsibility. So responsibility for your awakening, for your experience, for your life. The second center really wants you to realize that for yourself, that emotions are energy in motion. It is information. You can use your emotions to guide you. You can, instead of developing resistance to anger and resentment and apathy and all of these lower emotions, use them as a guidepost in your experience and feel them fully. And you start to claim your sovereignty and you start to claim your responsibility. So that's very high level, kind of how I think about the second center. Shadows can be shame, guilt, a lot of shame and guilt at the
Probably
second center.
people pleasing. I would probably put people pleasing in
For
this,
sure.
right? Because of other and disempowerment. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you all relate to your second center?
Yeah, I also spent a lot of time in this center in my journey. I feel like for me, it showed up in a huge like block to pleasure, and not just sexually, but in the way that any experience can be pleasurable. It was a huge invitation for me to step into feeling and step into, not only emotions, but feeling in my body, like feeling in those lower energy centers. And as you're speaking, Crystal, a lot of what came up for me is that radical responsibility as the creator, and like you're saying, not just the creator of human life, but creator of everything in my life, every situation, everything that's contextually creating the scaffolding of my life. Like I am responsible for all of that. And reclaiming that sovereignty as the co-creator of everything, of being able to, in any moment, kind of tune into where I am and step back into that space of the creator. It's a lot of the work that I feel like's come from intention being placed into that energy center. That's what's coming up for me.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So basically, when we think about it, so far we've hit our first center or root chakra, which is I am safe.
I'm safe.
And then we move up into our sacral chakra, which is I am connected, right? And then where
I'm
do we
connected.
I'm the
I'm
creator.
the creator.
I'm the creator. I'm empowered. And then where
I'm
do we
sovereign.
go into the third one?
Yeah, the third one, I'm worthy.
Solar plexus.
Solar plexus. I'm working on this one right now. This is a big one.
I love this center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a juicy one. Yeah. And not to say that I am worthy or the idea of worthiness, this comes into play in every center in some way. But at the third center, which is right around where your navel is, in your mid spine, lower to mid spine, this is about you're worthy of who it is that you are in this lifetime and across lifetimes. And this is I'm worthy of safety. I'm worthy of money. I'm worthy of my creations. I'm worthy of the relationships. I'm responsible also. This all starts to come together in a really beautiful way at the third center. And this is the completion of what I call the lower triangle. So you can think of kind of the heart being the top of the triangle and the bottom of the triangle being the first center. And so this is the earthly experience. And this is where we really examine our sense of self, our thoughts, our beliefs that comprise our ego or personality. This is where the third center is asking, first of all, do you have the courage, because there's this fieriness at the third center that's required. Do you have the courage to go further, to go to the next stage of consciousness? And if you do, and the answer is yes, you're having to really examine your thoughts about life and about yourself. Thoughts you continue to think, which are your beliefs. And are these thoughts and beliefs aligned with who you really are? How aligned can you bring your ego or personality into your soul? This is where I talk about how much soul can you bring into this dimension as your sense of self in this lifetime. And so this requires courage. It requires this fieriness and this determination and this willpower to illuminate. That's why we see so much light at the third center. It's illuminating a lot of what maybe has been dark or unknown up until that point. So there's a big challenge. I think of it as the center of it. It's almost like a spiritual, like, you're going to do this kind of vibe at the third center. And it's up to us if we want to go there.
Yeah, for me, it feels a lot like, in its simplest terms, just kind of how devoted to your authentic self are you? Like how, how connected are you to your truth and to your ability to tap into your specific, unique essence? Like how close is that for you? Which is, as we're saying, bring more soulfulness, more soul is your essence into this character of Kat, into this human incarnation. But when we're in our third energy center, when we're working there, I feel like our ability to more of the time throughout the day, throughout the ebbing of ego back into soulfulness, that more of the time we're able to occupy that space of authenticity and genuine expression and like, yes, this is who I am. And it's this just like knowing and unapologetic sense of being is what comes up for me.
Love
I
that.
love this center.
Unapologetic sense of being. Double click on that. Yeah.
Highlight.
And I'm curious how like the third center and the second center kind of intertwine with each other, because I feel like when I think about it, I feel like I kind of get stuck in the third center in a funny way. Like I start to scrutinize whether or not I'm fully authentic to a fault, almost like where, especially when it comes to creativity and to self-expression, I'll start going like, oh, but is that fully aligned in everything I want to say? You know what I mean? And it'll kind of threaten like the sense of safety, which would come from the first center. If I'm like, oh God, like, is that not fully the expression that I want to reach? So I'm curious how the second and third kind of intertwine, like the play between fluid creation and, just allowing things to come through you into this planet and that authentic expression, right?
Yeah, I think what's coming up for me is there's so many currents, but there's like two main currents, which is the liberation current, which is from your first center up, moving energy up. So that from that perspective, if you planted the seed of something in your second center, then you have the foundations of your experience, which is your first center, to support the seed being planted in the second center. It's the sun, it's the light, it's your willpower and determination that germinates that seed in your third center. And your ability to connect with others and yourself in your heart space, to kind of start to bring that into the world through love, through a real deep alignment in your heart center. And then in your throat center, and I think this is what I'm kind of hearing from you. This is where the trust and faith really comes in. It's a different it's a different level than we've talked about previously of trust and faith at the throat.
Because it's outward rather than
It's
fully
outward.
internal.
You're actually trusting your process. You're trusting your germination. You're trusting your journey up until that point. And this has also tripped me up too, because sometimes at the throat center, we can get caught up in perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
And what the throat wants to remind you of is that it's your current highest understanding.
Yeah.
Give yourself permission. You don't have to have it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be your current highest understanding and expression. And that can really just settle the throat down and allow that germination to come more easily from the second center up.
Yeah. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, and I think it's really fun to start once you have kind of this foundational understanding of each center to play this game of like which piece from which, and there's so many different like iterations of how they all play together. And even to your question, Linda, kind of how I see it is like our third energy center, our solar plexus, it's like when you tune to your specific radio station, like we each have our own, specific energetic blueprint. So when you are really balanced in your third energy center and you're able to like so fine-tunedly stand in your specific radio frequency, it's like then you're kind of communicating that you're open and willing to receive like what specific downloads are for you, which then to me relates back to our sacral of like in order to receive them and to create and from that space, I have to be really steadfast and grounded in my sense of self in my specific radio station so that my specific downloads can come through and be birthed through me. And then, like Crystal said, come through our heart, come out of our throat, like express out of us. So it's like they're all this like soup,
Yeah, like a divine dance. Yeah, that makes so much sense. So what are some like symptoms that the solar plexus is blocked, the third center is blocked or is stagnated?
So a feeling of a unaligned ego, which is that you might be experiencing a lot of inferiority, feeling inferior to others or to life, just feeling like you don't have that fire in you. You're just kind of along for the ride. So there can be some apathy there, which is it's kind of beyond not engaging in life. It's like, why bother? So that's you can imagine, it makes sense, right? In your mind's eye, you're like, oh yeah, my fire's a little dim.
Yeah.
I don't feel activated. I don't feel like I'm a co-creator with life. And like what I do has meaning and impact and power, that it just doesn't matter. And so there's inferiority. There's also superiority, which is what people are more used to when we talk about the ego, is like somebody that comes off as, but that's as a perception, right? I'm talking more about the internal experience. Somebody can come off as like thinking they know, you think that they know everything. It's a very different internal experience.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like narcissists tend to be the most insecure and the lowest sense of self-worth. Yeah. But it's
so this
expressed
is where,
differently.
again, you bring it right back to worthiness. Do you feel worthy of life and of your role in this lifetime? So worthiness is a big one. And just a sense of fire. So physically, you can have digestive issues, you could have adrenal issues, you could have kind of like liver issues, glucose issues, lower mid-back issues. I think those are probably the big ones. Kidney, whenever I had a kidney infection, I was like, what's going on in my power center? What do I need to pay attention to?
I love power center. That's a good way to think of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really juicy one. And so the first three centers are your human experience, very much planetary experience. So I think that brings us to a pretty powerful conclusion here on the first three centers, where you feel really supported, safe in your body, connected to the planet. Your second center is your center of sovereignty, of creation, of relationship, of emotion. Your third center, your sense of self, your ego, how your beliefs are being framed and created. And do you want to continue to feed those beliefs? Your willpower, your sense of worthiness. And so we'll go into the rest of the energy centers in another episode for sure. But I think we can drop into meditation at this point. All right, we can drop in together. If you're driving or doing other things, you can always save this, come back later and do this meditation with us. But for those of you who are ready to drop in now, you can find a nice upright position. And if you want more of these, you can find so much more in SoulPod, all kinds of practices for your energetic health. All right, now finding a seat, nice straight upright spine if you can. Deep breath in through your nose and releasing through your mouth, and giving yourself permission to come into this time, this space, with these beings that all have an intention for awakening, for activating their energy centers, for becoming more familiar with these centers, for bringing some more harmony to their energetic spiritual body and their physical body. Deep breath in through your nose, soft release through your mouth, and simply bringing your awareness to your very first center, right at your perineum, right at the very base of your seat, and seeing if you can sense this space in and around this center, within your body and just outside of your body. Deep breath in through your nose and soft release through your mouth. And as you become more aware of this center, and by becoming more aware of this center, you are already bringing it into activation, into harmony with the power of your awareness. But seeing if you can sense through your mind's eye, through your imagination, through your spiritual sensing, a light at this center. And the light can be moving, it can be rotating, it can be expanding. It can be a certain color, perhaps red or brown, and without any judgment, just becoming aware of this center and connecting to this light as you breathe into it. And with each inhale, expanding this light all throughout your lower seat. With each inhale, drawing that light out further and further down your legs. The same energy, the same light, the same consciousness, until your lower legs all the way down to your feet are lit up with this light of your first center. Deep breath in through your nose, soft release through your mouth, and opening the gate right below your first center so more energy can flow into it. More energy can flow into your central channel. And saying to yourself, I am safe, I am supported, I have everything that I need. The planet hears me. My body is incredibly intelligent and knows how to heal. Money loves me. It loves to flow through me, to me, and out from me in this beautiful, activating way that delights my mind, body, and spirit. Deep breath in through your nose, soft release through your mouth, opening the gates so more light can flow from your first center to your second center at the very base of your spine, the very base of your lower back, your lower pelvis, feeling this space in and around your body, seeing if you can sense this center. And maybe you can connect with a light. Maybe it's a slightly different color. Maybe it's moving in a slightly different way. Without judgment, simply becoming aware of your second center, allowing more light to flow from the first center into the second center. And then with your breath on every inhale, expanding the light from the center all throughout your lower pelvis, your abdomen, filling this space in your pelvis with this light and saying to yourself here, my emotions are my guide. Through my emotions, I can transform. I am the creator. My relationships are powerful servants of my destiny. I welcome inspiration in all of its forms that serve me and serve the collective. Deep breath in through your nose, soft release through your mouth. And I am sovereign. My energy is my own. My emotions are my own. Opening the gates from your second center to your third center, right around your navel, your lower back, sensing this space, seeing if you can notice a fire here, an energy here, a light here, allowing it to come online through your awareness and feeling all three energy centers at once, your first, your second, and your third, expanding this light into your entire abdomen, your mid-spine, through your digestive tract, your kidneys, your liver, allowing this light to penetrate everywhere so that your lower body from your navel down is completely lit up in this light. And saying to yourself, I am worthy. I am worthy of exactly where I am and exactly who I am. There's a powerful momentum to my life. I am empowered by life itself. I am excited to fulfill my dharma, my purpose in this lifetime. The path before me lights up as I walk it. I love who I am. Deep breath in through your nose, soft release through your mouth, and landing to close on your heart space, maybe one hand over the other at your heart, and feeling yourself expand a little bit more in love for yourself and your journey, appreciation for you doing the work, for expanding into the unknown, for showing up, and maybe sending someone that needs it today a little love from your aligned energy system, your aligned heart, your soul. Deep breath in through your nose, soft release through your mouth, opening your eyes when you're ready to a new time, some new space. And until next time, light beings, we'll see you. Thank you, Kat and Linda. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you for journeying with us today, Light Being. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And before you go, we want to invite you to explore the SoulPod app, where you can immerse yourself in daily lessons, guided meditations, and breath work to develop a soul-nourishing daily ritual and tune back into your own inner guidance system. You can download SoulPod in the App Store or directly from the show notes to start your free trial today and awaken the ancient wisdom within you.